another earthquake struck the border region of Turkey and Syria just 2 weeks after the area was devastated by a larger quake that killed more than 47,000 people. The earthquake killed 3 people and injured 200 people thus far. There were 32 aftershocks following Monday's tremor, and the largest of them had a magnitude of 5.8.
And weeks of dry winter weather have raised concerns that Italy could face another drought after last year's emergency. And the warning comes as Venice faces unusually low tides that are making it impossible for water taxis and ambulances to navigate some of its famous canals. Italian rivers and lakes are also suffering from severe lack of water. Italy's longest river, Po, had suffered its worst drought for 70 years last July.
And switching on to China markets, Goldman Sachs strategists see an economic shift from reopening to recovery, driving Chinese stocks as much as 24% higher by the end of this year. The firm sees a potential 24% upside to the MSCI China index. The country is moving past the reopening that followed its stringent zero-COVID policies to a growth phase. Chinese stocks entered bull market territory around the Lunar New Year earlier this year. The MSCI China index peaked at the end of January, up nearly 60% from the low seen in October.
And Sri Lanka's Election Commission has instructed its lawyers to inform the Supreme Court about a lack of funds. The local body polls are due on March 9th. The Commission also regretted that they were unable to keep to an earlier assurance given by the court that all arrangements would be in place to conduct the election.
Well, and North Korea has fired 2 ballistic missiles towards the East Sea. This is the second such attack within 48 hours, and it has been fired a day after the US and South Korea staged joint air drills. However, North Korean leader's sister Kim Yo-jong warned of corresponding counteraction to US-South Korean joint military drills. She said that the frequency of using the Pacific Ocean as their testing ground will depend on the nature of US actions. The UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres has condemned North Korea's actions and called on them to cease provocative action.
And streets have submerged near the Brazilian coast due to flooding. According to the reports, at least 36 people have been killed in Sao Paulo. Reports also say that many houses were swept away due to the storms. According to the officials, the situation remains extremely critical in Brazil.
Well, and US President Joe Biden made a surprise visit to Ukraine with days to go before the first anniversary of Russia's full-scale invasion. The US president has challenged Russia's policy from the Ukrainian soil, promising more military and humanitarian aid to Ukraine. Now, US President Joe Biden also spoke about the Russia-Ukraine tensions. Let's listen in.
The world was literally at the time bracing for the fall of Kyiv. Seems like a lot longer ago than a year, but think back to that year. Perhaps even the end of Ukraine. You know, 1 year later, Kyiv stands, and Ukraine stands. Democracy stands. The Americans stand with you, and the world stands with you. Kyiv has captured a part of my heart, I must say.
And well, we'll stay with that news. And you know, how has Russia been doing on the war front? Does it have the same kind of support that the Ukrainians have? Here's an ET Now explainer on it. Let's take a look.
The Russia-Ukraine war, it's just days away from marking 1 year since the actual conflict began. The war continues to remain in this volatile phase, and there is no clear path to peace. The US President Joe Biden has made that surprise visit to the Ukrainian capital of Kyiv to assure the country's president of the American solidarity, and this as it deals with an aggressive enemy. But how has Russia been doing on its count? Does it have the same kind of support that the Ukrainians have? And that's what we're here to explain. Now, Joe Biden's secret and surprise visit to Ukraine, that is being seen as a show of support for Ukraine. Having the world's strongest military power and its allies has actually helped Ukraine from ceding to Russia. Experts have suggested that Russia may have miscalculated the defense put up by Ukraine and that it has suffered huge casualties in its invasion. These numbers that we are now running on our screens, it's obvious that the war needs to end. While most of Russia's traditional allies have called for the conflict to end, China, as reports are suggesting, is allegedly helping Russia through non-lethal means. And now the US claims that China could also be moving to help Russia with lethal support. I express deep concerns about the possibility that China will provide lethal material support to Russia. To date, we have seen Chinese companies provide non-lethal support to Russia for use in Ukraine. The concern that we have now is based on information we have that they are considering providing lethal support, is what we got from Anthony Blinken, the US Secretary of State. So now, the question is, what kind of non-lethal support has China offered Russia? So far, China's support for Russia has been political. China has helped prevent efforts to condemn Moscow at the United Nations. Like India, it continues to buy oil from Russia, which the West claims helps Russia fund its war chest. But the Chinese forces, unlike India, have participated in joint military operations along with the Russian army. So, what could happen if China continues to support Russia? US-China relations already have been at their worst in decades. The Americans have tried to limit the latest microprocessors and manufacturing equipment to China to challenge its territorial claims in Taiwan. The US has also sanctioned several social media platforms and apps, and those are related to the Chinese Communist Party, and they've put strictures on them. Now, if the US continues to sanction Chinese entities, China could be emboldened to launch a Russian-style military operation in Taiwan, something the world just cannot afford at the moment. And this is what makes the Russia-Ukraine war such a volatile one. And with no clear path to peace, it could be a real dangerous proposition for other conflicts as well.